Alright, time to get homework 12 done. So, this one's just a list of, situations, and you're supposed to read the situation and then determine which of the quantities are the independent quantities and the dependent quantities, or, independent variables, dependent variables. Okay? So, first one, the Elkwood Aquatic Society is working with various reptile species to increase their populations. In their latest effort, the initial population of 400 endangered turtles tripled each year for the past 5 years. Okay, so as you're reading these, think about what are the things that are changing. Okay, the quantities that are changing are the variables you'll be looking at. Like, are they independent or dependent? Okay, solid numbers that are stagnant are not the ones we're looking for. We're looking for changing numbers. Okay, so our changing numbers here are the population and then the years. Okay, and we kind of talked about this in class. The population of the turtles is changing, and time is changing. Well, time isn't going to depend on the population changing. Time's going to continue on regardless of whatever the population is. So that's going to be the independent variable. It's going to be time, and we're kind of measuring it. And depending on how things go, measured in years or months, but this one apparently, since they put it in years, we're going to put it as years. The dependent quantity would be the population of the turtles. Okay. Number 2. Gillian is playing video games at an arcade, which is kind of an old school way of doing video games, but okay. Gillian starts with $40 and is playing games that cost 50 cents per game. So this $40 and the 50 are constants, okay? He started with $40. That's not going to change. The 50 cents per game, also not changing. Think about what numbers, what quantities are changing. Okay? How many games he's playing, that is changing. So, playing the games, that's changing. How many he's played. And then the total cost. Okay? So, we got total cost and playing games. With these two, you need to determine which one's the independent, which one's the dependent. Okay? The independent would be how many games he's playing, because he's choosing how many games he's going to play. So this would be how many games he's played, or he chooses to play. He played. Right, that's a changing quantity. And then the dependent quantity would be the total cost, right? As he increases the number of games played, the cost is going to go up. And that depends entirely on how many games he's played. Okay, now we're moving on to the commuter flight. Commuter flight between two cities in Oregon takes about 40 minutes. The plane will increase its altitude for the first half of the flight until it gets to 18,000 feet, and then will descend for the second half of the flight. The plane ascends and descends at a constant rate of 900 feet per minute. Okay, guys, these numbers here, they are not the variables. They're not changing. Okay, this speed is constant. No, it's constant. And the max height isn't going to change. The thing that is changing is the plane's height, right? It's in between those, between 0 and 18,000 feet. So that would be, the altitude would be one of the variables. And that's changing as time progresses. So once again, time would be our independent quantity. And this one's probably measured in minutes. And the dependent quantity would be the, whoa, why did I put D? Altitude. Okay? So altitude's changing as time increases. Sales commission. Julian works as a salesman for a textbook company, receives a monthly salary of $3,000 as well as a 10% commission on the amount of sales, which can be a pretty sweet deal if you're selling a lot of books. Alright, so things that change, don't look at the 3,000, that's not going to change, okay? But this commission on amount of sales, that's like a big hint that his commission depends on the sales, right? How much he's getting depends on how many sales he makes. And so the dependent would be his total commission. Okay? And that also kind of deals with his monthly salary. So his salary would be $3,000 plus the commission. But the commission part's the one that's changing. And the independent would be the sales, like how many books he ends up selling. Okay, moving on to 5. cooling tea. A freshly made cup of tea is served at a room temperature of about 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The tea cools rapidly at first and then slows down gradually as it approaches room temperature. Okay, like this whole cooling rapidly at first and then gradually as it approaches room temperature, right, that's telling you what's changing. Well, the temperature is changing, and also time is changing, right? Time continues. As time continues, the temperature changes. So the dependent quantity would be the temperature, and usually that's measured in degrees. So I'll have it like degrees. And the independent quantity would be time, okay? Because time's going to continue on whether or not this tea is cool. Okay, so that's why it's going to be independent. And this one's probably measured in like seconds or minutes, probably minutes. Okay, moving on to the last one, cross country. Brady runs for his high school cross country team. His strategy for each 5-kilometer race is always the same. He begins by increasing his speed so that by the time he reaches the first kilometer, he is running at a speed of 0.3 kilometers per minute. Then he maintains that speed for the next 2 kilometers. He then gradually speeds up for the remaining 2 kilometers so that he crosses the finish line. That when he crosses the finish line, he is running at a speed of 0.5 kilometers per minute. Okay, so what's changing? Okay, that would be his speed is changing, right, from 0 to 0.3 to 0.5. And what's, like, does that depend on something or something else depending on that? Well, it talks about how he is changing based on where he is in the course. Okay, so his distance affects his speed. So the dependent quantity in this case would be speed, and it's going to change depending on his distance. Okay? His distance he measures in kilometers, and his speed is being measured in kilometers per minute. Okay? So there you go. There's all 6.